have one cousin on death row, another cousin in prison for life. I didn't know we were poor.
Were you happy? Were you satisfied with that life?
And I was surrounded by love and just happy as I could be. You can't. You're the son of lint heads. He should be dead. He should absolutely be dead. I held him in my arms at least twice, thinking he was taking his last breath. All my brothers who got married right out of high school, they're all still married to the same woman. They've all been married over 50 years to the same person. Our parents were just madly in love. This is the greatest gift God gave me, was this woman. Divorce is very, very rare in my family. Don't let where you're born dictate what you're going to be.
Hello, Donald, and thank you so much for being on my podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. Generally speaking, I love talking about attachment. I love talking about generational trauma and the wounds that we all carry. Whether we're aware or not aware of it, I do believe that those are the richest conversations that I do have with people. But I am especially intrigued when it is men that wants to have that conversations with me. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, Maggie, it's great to be here. Great to be on your show. Just great to meet you.
Great to meet you too, Donald. Why don't you just start by telling me a little bit about your experience growing up in the U.S.?
Okay, I was born in South Carolina, and you have to realize something about the history of South Carolina in that it was very poor and it was controlled by agriculture, but it was also controlled by tenant farmers and cotton fields and things like that. From that, they built a cotton mill industry, and they were making blue jean products like that you wear, blue jeans. And this started maybe 1880 and on. Well, my family came off the farm and came to work in the mills, and they were called lint heads. And a lot of people look at that and they think that's a derogatory term, and it really was, but a lot of people wore it like as a sense of pride because it showed that they were working. But what happened, the reason they were called that was when they worked in the mill, they would come out and they would be covered in lint dust.
Mhm.
And so they called them lint heads. So a little odd thing there. But anyway, so my grandfathers and everyone in my family, they were just, they lived and worked in that industry. And when you lived and worked in that industry, you lived in a company house. You bought food at the company store. You sent your children to the company school. You worshiped at a company church. If you got sick, you went to the company doctor. You were basically controlled right by them. And if you failed, if you did something wrong, you were kicked out, and your family not only was without a job, but you were homeless, without anything, and you were cast out into where you would have to go back to being a sharecropper. So both my grandfathers started work in the mill when they were about 9 years old. I knew them very well. I mean, I knew these guys, and then they were born around 1900. I have to be careful when I say turn of the century. A lot of people think that's 2000. We talk about 1900.
Right.
And I laugh about this. My babysitter that I remember as a child was born in 1877, and she was my great grandmother. And I love that look on your face right now. And I considered her to be an evil woman who read palms and would look at you with glaring eyes and pretend to cast spells on us and things like that. It was really weird. But anyway, so the families, they became a part of this cycle where you would go to as much school as you wanted to, and then you would just go to work in the mill. So like I said, both my grandfathers were cotton mill workers. Then my father, when he was 14, he was going from 8th grade to 9th grade, and he realized that he would walk by the mill to go to the next school. And he decided, why am I doing this? I will end up in this mill anyway. They will hire me. So at the age of 14, my father went to work in the mill, my mother at the age of 16. And then I'm the fourth son to be born of them. And that was by the time my mother was 21. She had 4 boys. And you can imagine how poor everything was. You know, you're living in this environment. The mills paid, I'll say, for that time, it was okay. It was enough to get by on. But there were a lot of times I tell people I didn't know we were poor. I thought we were rich, because I would look at the people around me And I would think there's really no one maybe better than us, maybe a few, but there's a lot of people worse than us. At least we had a floor in a home. Our neighbors had a dirt floor, things like that. And so it was a different lifestyle that a lot of people don't realize that that was not that long ago in the South. And so I was one person who got out of that. I had 42 aunts and uncles and 80 something first cousins that I grew up around. Not, and I'm not saying that these were distant people. These were people like my brothers and sisters who lived in the same communities that we lived in. And
Yeah.
so I'm always with them. So a large, let's just say a somewhat large family with a lot of different influences that you can imagine in that, you have everyone from devout Christians to devout alcoholics,
Mhm.
in that. And so you're seeing all this different flow of humanity coming up. And I tell people it was almost like a statistical study to be able to see this. But no one in my family had ever been to college. If you graduated high school, that was like a miracle. That was by the time my parents came along, their expectation for their four sons was graduate from high school, get married, get a job, move out at the age of 18. And all three of my brothers did. All three, they graduated high school, but one was married 2 weeks after graduation. The others were married within a few months and they moved out. When it came to me, I'm different. And and I didn't follow that cycle. And
Right.
that's where I came from.
I'm very curious to see where that continue, but I feel inclined to ask though, before you realized that you were poor, when you were just in your bubble, I don't know how else to describe it, but I mean, over in your community, when you hadn't had any other exposure, were you happy? Were you satisfied with that life?
Oh, I was sad. I was surrounded by love and just happy as I could be. It was a good life. That's why I tell people it's a little bit odd. A lot of people think that's odd. But like I said, if you don't know that you're poor, if you don't know you don't have, you're very happy. And for me, I had a full time job. I've had a full time job since the time I was 12 years old. And we were expected to go to work. And leading up to that, it wasn't a pay job. It was working in the garden, working around the house, or doing whatever. There was very little time for leisure, is what I would say, or play. Maybe on Sunday afternoon, and we even had to be quiet at that point. But it was. I remember I would go to my grandfather's house on the mill, what we call the Mill Hill or the Mill Village, and while my parents were working, and I would go there. And as soon as I got there in the morning, my grandpa, my pawpaw, would say, these are your rows of beans for the day. Your job is to pull the weeds, pick the beans." And so we would do that in the hot sun all morning. After lunch, we would sit on the front porch in the cool and the shade, and we would shell the beans. And so my thumb is even a little bit worn still from that as those days. And I know that sounds odd, but that's what we did. And then our parents would pick us up. We would go to our house and we would do more work. And so
Right.
it was normal to me. I didn't know there was another life. I didn't know you could hang out and do nothing.
It's something beautiful with what you're sharing too, because ignorance is bliss, right? I mean, I can't help but understand that there's some value to it because living in a world and being raised in a world that slowly came. When I grew up, social media was became pretty big. Now it's massive, but you lived in a world where you didn't have all that outside exposure and you were happy. Today, we're living in an age where we have comparisons from any culture, any country, from anywhere in the world. Anyone can be visible online. And we can all compare ourselves so much to each other's lives. And who's to say what is the right course of action? Whoever is happy should have had the I don't even know what to say. Should have had the last call or something to acknowledge that being happy is simply more important than what you're doing as long as you're happy doing it, right?
Yeah,
It's quite
and I'll
interesting.
say this. Yeah, I was surrounded by love, and I saw that. But I did have cousins who were not surrounded by that, and I had some. I know you probably read this. I have one cousin on death row, another cousin in prison for life. But it was, and these are not distant relatives. These were people I spent the night with, or we did things together. And
Right.
so I also saw that contrast of where you can be happy or not happy in I would say, the psychological, physical torture that some people have as they're growing up. But yeah, I was happy. Now there was one thing that intrigued me that you said about what did I know outside of my bubble. We did have a television. My grandfather had a television, and it was a real small screen, and you could watch it, and we would see the outside world. Would watch a Tarzan movie. He's in Africa. You would see something like that, and it was amazing to us. We There was no concept of going to a zoo and seeing a lion or anything, but you would see this black and white image. And then occasionally you would have maybe a missionary come to your church and talk about, oh, I'm a missionary to Africa or somewhere, and they would tell these things. And I remember it was third or fourth grade, a teacher showing me a globe for the first time. And
Mhm.
the sense of, wait a minute, this is the earth. Because we would sing this song in church, He's got the whole world in his hands. And so you would picture God like this. Then all of a sudden I see a globe, and the teacher goes, and you live right here. And she would point, this is South Carolina. This is where you live. And then I would look at the world and I go, wait a minute, this is Africa. This is where Tarzan's from. And so I'd look around her, and I would think this is a big world. And then to think that in my lifetime that I went from that to where I lived around the world, traveled around the world, worked around the world is really amazing. But I remember that perception of this is a big place, but it was my life.
It was your life. So, okay, so it sounds to me because you're using the words such as broke out of it or you got out of it. What did that mean to you to get out of that community or way of living? And what did it look like when you decided to go a completely different path than what your brothers did?
Yeah, I was in school, 12th grade, and guidance counselor or counselor called me to the office, like this obligatory meeting with everyone who was going to graduate. And so I go in. I had never been to the office. That was a bad thing. But I go in there and I sit down, and she goes, "Well, Donald, the question was basically like this: What mill will you be working in? Where will you go to work?" And ma'am, I was kind of thinking about going to college. And she was just stunned, looking at me. What are you talking about? You're going to college? You can't. You're the son of lint heads. What will you do? What factory will you work in? It was almost, let me rephrase this, Donald. This is not a possibility for you because in those days, there were no scholarships. There were no A's, the loan kind of concept that exists that I knew of. And I had no one telling me how to do this. And so I told her, I said, I was thinking about going to college. She was, well, what would you like to do? I thought, well, I'd like to be a teacher maybe. And she goes, well, to do that, Donald, you'd have to apply. You'd have to take the SAT. And my question was, what's the SAT? I didn't know what that was because no one in my family had ever done this. I didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. And I got the money, took the SAT, and I was accepted to Clemson University, which even in those days was difficult to get into. And then it was, oh, you actually got in. But then I would have teachers tell me I was not going to make it. When they found out, they were the naysayers. The teachers were, I don't think you'll make it, Donald, because you don't have the support structure. And my English skills were not very well. You may think I speak with a Southern accent now, but you should have heard me back then. And it was, we don't think you'll make it. Yeah, math and science, you'll do okay. But the other part, you won't. We really think you will fail. And so then I go to tell my parents, hey, Mama, I'm thinking about going to college. And she was, what are you talking about? How are you going to do that? You're going to work in this factory, aren't you? That's like your brothers. You're going to graduate, get married, and move into a single wide trailer and go work in a factory somewhere because the cotton mills had shut down by then. And I was like, well, Mom, I was thinking about going to college. And they got behind me and with it, they worked extra time. My mother went from 40 hours to 60 hours, and my daddy did the same thing. And once again, they didn't know the loan concept or anything like that. And they paid my bill every semester. My mother would write a check. She knew what it would be. She'd write a check and give it to me. And I was so naive. When I went to college, my parents waved to me at the front porch of their house. They didn't know they were supposed to take me to college and help me move in. They didn't know anything like that. It was have fun. We'll see you when you come back. And so I go to Clemson by myself. I didn't have a suitcase. I had an extra pair of pants and a shirt, sheets, pillowcase, and a blanket. And they were in a duffel bag. I looked like a homeless guy, with it strapped over my back, walking into the place. But I made it.
What year was that?
That was 1977.
Oh,
So not, I mean, to me, it doesn't sound like that far back, but I know to a lot of people, they're going, oh, this guy's ancient, but this was 1977. Yeah.
got you. Wow. So, I mean, I'm amazed that you were able to get in and to go and to break that pattern of behavior that your family's been doing for generations, it seems like. What was one of the biggest shockers for you transitioning out of that community and into college?
You would see the buildings and things, and then you would actually sit down and talk with the professor. And I was awestruck, because, I would go in and this is Dr. Blanton, this is Dr. Hash, this is Dr. Carpenter. And, your first thought is, are they going to tell me I'm sick or something? You're thinking medical doctor. You don't know that there's professors or whatever. And, that kind of thing. But just the structure of what college was like. And one of the funny things is I didn't know that I could drop a class. I didn't know it until my junior year that in college that you could, like after a few weeks, you could go, I don't think I want to take this class. And you could go and do a drop ad thing or whatever. I didn't know. And so I just stuck with whatever I was given, whatever professor I was given. I didn't know I could manipulate my schedule or anything like that. I thought you went right by the book and this is what you did. I went to one class, it was a chemistry 102 class. And the first day I'm there, there's 100 people. The second day I'm there, there's 30 people. Third day I'm there, there's 15 people. Everyone's dropping. I didn't know. And I think I ended up being only one of two or three people that passed the class. I passed with a D. That's a whole nother story, but I passed. So
Yeah.
that was good. I passed.
Yeah. So your experience was a lot like you go into a new situation and you're bringing the exact knowledge that you brought with you, like whatever you knew from before. You're not just suddenly in a new environment and you know exactly how to operate it. You have to navigate it day by day.
Yeah. And actually, what the teachers had told me in high school, they were correct about something. They were saying, we don't think you will make it because you don't have the support system, family support to help you with this. Now, I had the support system financially because they worked extra to pay. But my brothers, I would come home, my brothers would go, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? Why are you not married? They're, what are you thinking? You're 18, or at the time I was 20. And they were, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? You're not working. You're not earning money, But I was working on weekends and things. But to them, they saw me as a failure. They didn't see me as someone who was making it in the world. They saw that I was going to be, and that I was backwards, that in 4 years I would be back in the factory anyway, just like they were. And I was just wasting my life. A lot of people thought that, but this is one of the messages that I would tell everyone is to surround yourself with good people. And I was lucky or providence driven, whatever, but a man knocked on my door and we had to put our name and our major on the door. And a man knocked on my door one night and he said, he was like a junior and he says, hey, I see you're majoring in agricultural education. He goes, I have a group of people who study and would you like to come join our group? And that was the change in life for me because I went, well, I didn't go with him then, but I accepted the invitation, went to the next study session. And then they started showing me, this is how you make it in college. This is how you do it. And it taught me something, yes. And that's what I'll say, my freshman roommate, he was majoring in bong making, if you know what that term means. He was smoking weed every day, was all he did.
In the 70s, well, yeah, of course, in the 70s. What am I talking to?
Yeah. And he was smoking weed all the time. And everybody goes, did you not get in contact? I don't remember that I did. Maybe I don't remember. But, but that was what he was doing. So I got no help from him. It was because life was something totally different. But for me, when I finally got involved with that group, it changed my life. That I was able to learn a little bit about studying and how to succeed. And I always say, you look back and go, what were the big things in your life that made a difference? Well, my parents being able to pay my way, but then meeting that guy or that guy just knocking on my door, just walking down a hallway and
Yeah.
seeing my name. And he goes, hey, would you like to come over here and study with us?
That's
Changed my life.
beautiful. That's beautiful. I mean,
Yeah.
we all need some people in our lives to just be our saving grace sometimes. And I think we all have our own version of who that is in our life. And that is that person for you.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
is there a moment in time where you're done with college, you have your education, your degree, and you're getting a job after college, and your family look at you and recognize, though, I get it now. I understand why you did what you did. Did you ever arrive at that point?
Yeah, I did when I got my first job. And I went and I joke about this, but I went 8 semesters, just like the catalog had told me to do, two semesters each. And
Yeah.
I did it just like that. And so 4 years after I went to college, I got my first teaching job. And I think everyone was, dang, he actually is going to be a teacher, and it was that point where that you see people break out of that cycle. Oh, he's not in the mill. He's doing something different. And that was the thing. A lot of people a lot of the males in my family would join the military, but they would all go to the military, but would all come back and go to the mills. And I
Mhm.
think that's what a lot of people's concept was, that even if you went away, you came back to that environment. But then I was teaching in a school, and it was amazing that someone could actually get out of that cycle. Yes.
Yeah. That's so cool. I love a generational trauma breaker or a generational pattern breaker. I do find that very interesting, mostly because I just think that we're also different. Even within my siblings and I look at my three nieces, they're also different. So to expect that all of us would go the exact same path is just unreasonable. And it's not to say that going down that path is bad. It's just saying that, yes, you think that's great and that's a good choice for you, but I want to do what honors my authenticity. And it sounds like that's what you did. So what happened next?
Let me comment on that. Looking back at my father, I think about that day that he walked by the mill and he's 14 and he's walking to the ninth grade, first day of ninth grade. And he said, why should I go? Because this is where I'll end up. And, for him, there was no hope. But for me, I saw that little slim ray of light that said, hey, you can make this, you can do this. What happened after that was, we have to go back to after my freshman year. Back then, you got your grades in the mail. This was way before the days of computers or anything.
Right, of
And
course.
so I'm at the kitchen table and I get the letter from Clemson, and I knew that it was not going to be good. And as a matter of fact, people had been telling me to quit. Man that I was working for in the summer, he was going, just quit, Donald. I'll give you a full-time job. You don't need to go back to college. I need you here, this kind of thing. So I had all this pressure around me. And internally, I had said, if I fail anything, I'm quitting. And I knew it was going to be difficult. That chemistry class I talked about was going to be
Yeah.
difficult. To open up my first semester, I had made a 2.0, so a C average. So, I'm okay. Second semester, opened it up, and I had 6 D's and 1 B. And the funny story was I made the B in English. And that was the one everyone told me I wouldn't make it, that would fail me. Maybe I spent too much time in English. I don't know. But I looked at it, and so my GPA for the semester was 1.33. And my mother starts screaming, what are you doing? You're wasting your life. You're wasting our money. You're wasting your time. Quit school, come back to work, be like your brothers. And, I'm listening to that. And then I hear my daddy say, he passed me on the back. He goes, good job, son. I'm proud of you. You made it. Just go back and try harder. And I tell everyone I needed to hear both those stories, or both those messages. I needed to hear, quit wasting our time, but I needed to hear, just try harder. And from that, I went back. I decided, well, I didn't feel anything. That was a promise I made. My daddy's saying, go back. And so I go back and I got a little better every semester to where my last 3 semesters, I made the dean's list. The last semester, I made a 4.0. I never made straight A's in my life. And I was teaching, but I went back and got my master's, or got a master's and made a 4.0 there. And I went straight into a doctoral program and got a doctorate of education. I was working for the university. I had a 4.0 in that as well. But then I had dedicated my life to teaching. I taught for about 28 years. And I went to work for the Department of Defense education activity and moved to South Korea and Japan and became an education research analyst. And I just dealt with numbers. When I did the doctorate work, my emphasis was in statistics and research. I know this sounds really different than the kid who was picking beans on the mill hill. And so I ended up looking at quality control basically of schools within the Department of Defense. And so I'm working all around the world, and there was only 8 of us in that position in the world. And I ended up working for the Center for Instructional Leadership. And so, yeah, I did okay in life.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a joke. That's incredible, though. I can't help but kind of, I love stories like this. It just goes to show that at the end of the day, we have to cater for ourselves. We have to look out for our own best interest. And of course, we can be influenced and we can even believe that our parents are the authority that knows everything, but we will have a voice inside of ourselves that will tell us otherwise, not to disregard our parents, but just to honor ourselves. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did. And I love a good success story in that sense, that you're breaking the pattern and you're doing what's right for you.
It's actually greater than anything I've ever done. But I have 2 sons, and both of them have doctorates. One is a
Mhm.
PhD, and the other is a doctor of theology. And so,
Right.
so my 2 sons didn't go back to the mill.
Right.
They excelled. And so that's like my trophy is what my sons, how they succeed, how they excelled.
Yeah, I mean, it is beautiful that it could go that way. And actually, that reminded me into something that I did want to mention or to see to what extent you're excited or comfortable talking about it. But you wrote in your profile that at some point during your life, you were witnessing your son going through was it crack cocaine
Oh
addiction?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
My youngest son who has the theology degree. Yeah. Okay. And I'll make this story a little bit humorous, but it's a horrible story. But
Okay.
he was a beautiful man. Oh, he still is, but he was a beautiful man in high school. He was student body president. He was like everybody loved him, but I mean, he looked like a model. He was just really this beautiful guy. Well, what happens when you're like that and you're very charismatic? Everyone wants to be around you. Everybody wants to invite you to the party. And I'm not saying it was other people's fault, but he went to college. He went too early. He went at 17. He started smoking weed, and then within a year or so, he's on crack cocaine. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but he became a drug addict, alcoholic, and he actually should be in prison and or dead. But he was like that for many years. I think 6 or 7 years. He was a hardcore drug addict to the point that he was homeless, living in a van. And, you think about that is because I have 2 sons. One son was a workaholic who earned his pilot's license when he was 16, owned an airplane when he was 19, and all this. And then I had the other son who was Mr. Charismatic, but who fell by the wayside, got involved in drugs and all this, and just a horrible way. But then about his 5th rehab, he finally got it right. And when he got out of the rehab, his life changed completely. And he said, I will not be that way anymore. He dedicated his life to helping others to not be involved in that. And he's a minister now. And so he dedicated his life to that and helping other people better their lives. So yeah, there's another thing. No matter how successful I am or I was, people still had to make their own choice. My sons made their own choice. you can only do so much of an example for your children, and people are going to do just what they want to do. Just like you said earlier, people are different. But luckily, and by the grace of God, he made it out. But he should be dead. He should absolutely be dead. I held him in my arms at least twice, thinking he was taking his last breath, where he had overdosed. At one time, his heart rate got down to, it was less than say 20 beats a minute, and it was really bad. And the other side of that was he was a competitive runner. He was like a marathon runner. And I know that sounds really crazy because that doesn't make sense, but he would say this, that the crack cocaine, the running and the exercise made the crack have a higher high. Maybe I shouldn't say that because I don't want to encourage anyone to in any way, but he would say that the exercise made the drugs more powerful to him because he got
Mm.
rid of the fat content in his body, this kind of thing, and it was more powerful. And so I will, it was a horrible, horrible time in my life that you have a child that you see killing himself in front of you, breaking the law and doing bad things, and just living in a horrible, horrible situation. And you're thinking any day that you're going to find him dead, or someone's going to call you and tell you he's dead. But like I said, just once again, by the grace of God, he made it out of that. And today, if you met him, he's got a big, thick beard and all this, but he's still beautiful. But he still runs marathons, but he got off the drugs. He was one of the few. When he went, they told him there were three people came in the day he did to the rehab, and they told him, they said, basically, we have a 33% success rate. The other two guys right now today are dead, and
Mm.
he was the one who made it. I mean, they were true. It wasn't like it was, they didn't predict it. They didn't go, one of you choose who's going to live. But he made it and they didn't. And so it's a difficult thing. A family member gets involved in drugs in the situation like he did. It's
Right.
hard.
Yeah. I recently I interviewed a woman, a mother who had lost her son to an opioid addiction, and that was a result of having had multiple injuries related to soccer and needing surgery. And in surgery or after surgery, he would get opioids to deal with the pain, but there was never any system in place to help him get off of that drug. And so when he was in and out of the hospital with soccer related injuries or something as like a wisdom tooth that needed to get out, like he had developed an opioid addiction from a very young age just because of just because he was in and out so much because of these injuries. And she said to me that when talking about pride and when you're proud of your children, very often you hear people list all of these accomplishments that they have in terms of what title they have or what they own or where they live or how much money they have. But she was talking about the biggest pride that she would ever have witnessed her son experience is if he ever recovered from that drug addiction. That would have been her greatest wish and her greatest pride. And you got to experience that. And I think that's beautiful.
I'll tell you, it is absolutely the darkest moments of your life is to see your child that you love so much just wasting their life away. But like I said, for me, it's been, what's it been, like 18 years now, I think, since that happened. And just to see, how you can transform your life and become someone different. There is hope that you can make it out of that situation. And for parents, you may think it's a hopeless situation, but there are some programs out there that can help people. And this is what I'll say. We were lucky to get him into what we got him into because we had him in and out of, like I said, other drug rehabs, like 30-day things were just absolutely worthless. He learned more about drugs than getting him off drugs while he was there. He would even have, one time he even had a counselor would sell him drugs after the session. And so you have to be really careful about finding the right program. I'll say this, a 30-day program is meaningless. And I know a lot of people won't like that. Let me rephrase it. It was meaningless for us.
Mm.
It may be good for someone else. It was meaningless for us. And so we got him into a program that was, let's say, there was no timeline on the other end of it. It was, he will get out when he gets better. But he had to agree to it as well. And he had to sense that there was something wrong. It wasn't like we
Mm.
caught him as a prisoner and put him in a situation he chose. He was, I know I need to be better. And
Yeah.
so it took his self-motivation to do it. Very little I did to help him out other than help him find a place that helped him.
Yeah. Did you experience in your life you were going in a different direction, and then you've also had your sons going in a different direction, and that you've had two sons that have these polar opposite directions? It seems like at least at some point in the journey, they were on complete different scales, right? And I wonder, did you ever experience a lot of prejudice from your family and your community? Or since you were talking about how many you guys were, it was such a large volume of people. Do you feel as though you consistently stayed close to each other and stayed a community that was consistently supportive of each other? Or did you experience more backlash than support?
Actually loving and support because, I mean, there were alcoholics in the family. And so everyone had seen, those abuse situations before. And I will say this amount of prayers and love and support people gave was overwhelming. As a matter of fact, there would be people who, every time you saw them, they would say, I'm praying for him. I'm praying for him. And the whole community knew Zach he's a crack addict. They knew.
Mhm.
Everyone in the family knew. And we were never ostracized. Instead, it was, we're going to support you every way we can.
Mhm.
We still remain very, very close. All of my family, some of my best friends in my life are my family, cousins that I grew up with, and my brothers. I'm still very close to them. And oh, by the way, all my brothers who got married right out of high school, they're all still married to the same woman.
That's beautiful. That makes me really happy.
Let's say they've all been married over 50 years to the same person.
Oh,
And, and I think they're happy. They appear happy.
yeah. I would love to have a conversation with one of them about how to keep a marriage lasting for years, because I definitely am one of those people who genuinely wants a long-term committed relationship and a marriage that is full of love and full of continuous growth, where in which we grow together. And if we grow apart, we find each other again. So yeah, I do love a good love story. And I love to hear when people stay happy and find ways to fall in love even after 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and even
Yeah.
years. So that is beautiful.
Oh yeah. And I see them and I ask them a lot of times, I joke about it. Are you still happy? And they'll go, yeah, we're still a little bit happy. It's different. Of course it's different than when you were newlyweds,
Right.
but you see the love and support that they give each other. We had great examples. Our parents were just madly in love.
Oh,
And I will say this, affectionately in love, holding hands. My daddy would always open the car door for my mama.
oh,
He was a complete gentleman to her. And, he would tell everyone, this is the greatest gift God gave me was this woman. And I know that sounds, a lot of people won't like the
sounds
way I
beautiful.
say that,
It sounds
but yeah,
beautiful to me.
but, but she would say the same thing, God gifted me this man and they were so in love growing, and they grew together in love. And when my father passed a few years ago, my mother's still alive. It was devastating to her because, the man she had been married to since she was 16, you know, was gone. And so it was difficult. And so, but, we also saw that with our grandparents, that they were just madly in love. And I can't tell you some of the things, I can't tell you some of the stories, but the affection of, the kissing, the holding hands, and just knowing that they were just in love. So it was cool. Yeah. But we also had the bad examples. We would also see aunts and uncles who fought, didn't like each other.
Yeah.
So you would see that. And so you would go, I don't want to be like Charles and Shirley. I
Yeah.
want to be like Roberta and LJ. I want to be like this couple. So you think of it in those terms. But you know what? None of us have perfect marriages. We all make mistakes, along the way, and we just do the best we can.
We learn to get good at repair.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say this is going to sound kind of odd, but divorce is very, very rare in my family. Out of the 80 something cousins, I can only think of 3 or 4 who were divorced.
Wow.
That's kind of weird. It's either,
It's worth investigating, actually. I kind of want to
yeah,
come investigate.
yeah, it is really odd, but to think about it, but divorce
Maybe
is
it's not
just,
so odd. Maybe if they for generations saw visible love and they saw what it looked like to be in a happy marriage, and what it looked like to repair and what it looked like to honor each other. Because that's what it sounds like. So some of the things that you said is that God blessed them with each other. And that's the narrative that they were telling them. When they're looking at their partner as a gift from God, and that's what they're treating it as, I think that that's also what they're reflecting. That's what they're showing the world. And when that's what you're showing the world, people get a healthy relationship with marriage. And I think that's why the divorce rate in your family is so low. Granted that there's 80 of your cousins and you. So that is, it's obvious actually.
We would see, we would see the partnership between the two. We would see them both working side by side and that they would, but like I said, and I'll say my pawpaws, they would sit down to the meal that my grandmother maybe had fixed, but my pawpaw he would be, look at this great meal my wife has made for everyone. And when it would get through, it would be, now everyone has to clean up. We're going to help her, this kind of thing. It was, there was not a hierarchy to it. It was a complete partnership that they loved each other. And you're right. I think that's the way all of my cousins I've seen, that's the way they handle their married lives. That's how they do. This is a blessed partnership that I have with someone that I love very much.
Yeah, that's
So
beautiful.
it works out. Yeah.
Yeah. And all of that to say too, that you did say that you had both. You did see an example of what you didn't want, and then you did see an example of what you did want. So I think there is a gift to the comparison as well, because you recognize what is desirable for you. But I do wonder, Donald, is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you want to talk about?
Well, there's 1,000 things, but in the time that we have, I wrote a book with a college roommate called Born of Nothing, and it's his story and my story together. He was diagnosed with a learning disability and his parents were told he could not make it. But the same thing as me, where teachers were telling me I couldn't make it. And he ends up being a lieutenant colonel in the military and served 30 years. And then I ended up being in the position I said. And so it was that concept of you can't start from nothing, and don't let where you're born dictate what you're going to be. The message is you can break out of that cycle. You can make it. When people are telling you can't, you can't. You can find that. I am DonaldWilliams.com is my website. I am DonaldWilliams.com. And so they can find that there.
I'm so intrigued by your story. I think it's a beautiful one. I think it's beautiful how it started with this career, but then it also segued into love, all of which that I love talking about. So for me, this has been a very joyful conversation. So thank you so much for being here, Donald. I've had a great time talking with you.
Oh, you too, Maggie. You're wonderful. Your smile is infectious, is what I'm saying. It's great.
Nice to hear. I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.